Welcome to the Awarenezzz Podcast. In today's episode, we had the chance to speak with Rick Cost. Rick is the head of performance of Olympique Lyon, former director of performance of US Soccer, and Olympic medalist with the Netherlands field hockey team as head of performance as well. So Rick has worked with the best athletes in the world, and in today's episode he shared the exact principles he used to give them results. First, we talk about the concept of microdosing, how smaller, shorter sessions can lead to bigger results in speed and power than just long workouts once a week. Secondly, we also talk about the importance of training from first principles and how it is super important of knowing the purpose behind every workout that you do, every training that you do. And if you don't do it, well, sometimes it might even be a waste of time. And finally, we covered how to build a program that makes sense for you as an individual athlete instead of copying everybody else. This episode is full of high-level, actionable advice that you can apply to your training today. So if you're a coach or an athlete that is looking to improve your performance, then this episode is definitely a must-watch. Enjoy.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to the 30th episode of the Awarenezzz Podcast. Today we're here with our guest, Rick Cost. Thank you very much for being with us, and introduce yourselves to the people.
Awesome, guys. Great to be here, of course. Real quick, Rick Cost. I'm from the Netherlands, lived in America for 5 years. Now I'm in France, so a little bit of a globetrotter from a professional standpoint, to say so.
Rick, and I mean, right now you're in France, but tell us a little bit of what you're doing over there and also what got you to that point, like all the way from the start, what got you into the sports performance world since the beginning, why you got into that career, and then a little bit through that journey on all the things that you went through to now be in France, you know?
Yeah. So obviously, and it's not a secret, you send over some questions. So when I saw this, I've been talking about this from a professional standpoint for a long time in a lot of different podcasts. So I thought about taking it a little bit over, like into a different direction, more the why behind it. First of all, I was a tennis player when I was young. I loved sports. I was one of those kids who apparently had the talent of being the fastest and jump the highest and everything there, that helped me from a physical standpoint. So I knew by the time I was 17, I wanted to do something in sports. But it was very, very difficult to be in sports and also study, for instance, medicine. So one of the things I did all the way in the beginnings, I did aerodynamics on the technical university, and after a year I thought I just have to be doing so much math. I did like the mechanical part of it, and then it wasn't possible for me combining sports and also doing medicine. So I thought, what's the nearest thing that comes to doing biomechanics or mechanics and sports? And that was human movement science. I'm an old guy, so all the way at the time, in that time, sports science was called human movement science, and you have all these different areas. So I did human movement science, but also did physical therapy at the same time. So I was lucky to be able to combine two different studies. And after that, I was like, right, I started my PhD, and during my PhD, I had some time left, and I did sports psychology. So I pretty much put a bit of a backpack of everything on my knowledge, and while still being in sports, I started my own company because that's why it's so interesting. What I think interesting about the journey at the time was I was not able to, I needed to pay for things. In tennis, you can only pay if you win something. And unfortunately, I wasn't winning a lot at that time in my life. So I didn't have a lot of money. I needed to travel up and about. So I started my own company in personal training. So after personal training, in a company, I opened a physical therapy practice while also starting to work in top sport. First in handball, making 400 euros a year, because there is no money in handball. But I worked my ass off after working my own company. We trained at 6 p.m. So I drove all the way to the other side in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
and back, came home at 2 a.m. and need to go, do my PhD the next morning, etc., etc. So that's when I jumped into field hockey, and at the time it was like, oh, now I have all this equipment and I can jump into field hockey. But then I was the only person I was a physical therapist, I was a physical coach, I was a sports scientist, I was a strength and conditioning coach, I did the warm-ups, I thought with I did the analytics behind the computer. So I just couldn't find any extra time to do so, but I also had to manage a physical therapy practice. So I had energy enough. But then obviously the why came, how do you get from Olympic sports? Because at the time I went from Beijing all the way up to Rio with Olympic sport, field hockey, handball, etc. And then it was like, how do I, how can I make my money out of this? Instead of working in physical therapy practice, which I liked, but I didn't love. And I loved the sport, but it didn't give me a penny. So that's when so I actually applied for a job at Feyenoord. And they were looking it resonated with me because they were looking for a multi-sports personality who had the knowledge of medical and had the knowledge of sports science, but also had the knowledge, and I benefited from that, to be a sports psychologist. So the work that I did before, I would say in 1999 to 2002, 2004, by the time I got to Feyenoord, which was 2016, I was pretty much how do you call it? A jack of all trades in performance, doing that for 13, 14 years, while other people were just picking up and only were physical therapists or only were, sports scientist wasn't really an existing role, but at least working with sports science practices. So I had everything, and that's where it was interesting for Feyenoord to get me in. And from there on, I think things really, started to work out. After that, I never really applied for a job anymore. People just more came to me and asked me, "Hey, you got a very interesting profile. Maybe it makes sense to come over to America." I know that they were looking for a performance director for about 3 years, 2.5 years. After that, I think they had one of the best out there at the time. And then they couldn't find someone, and because they want that person to oversee sports medicine, sports science, strength and conditioning, research, innovation, everything else. And I did my publications, etc. So the research innovation part obviously was there. So I was able to go to America with US Soccer as a performance director. And that was in 2020. So I came in, and it was a organized organization in performance at the time. So I tried to manage things. I'm a very organized person. You like it or you hate it. Some people live in chaos and they love the chaos. I try from chaos to make it to make it clear for everyone, to create clarity around what's your role, what's your responsibility. I try to make work light and efficient, but also fun for the people in my team. So I make sure that they know where to go to if they have an issue, but also where to take the successes. But that's pretty much what I did in America. And by the time I left, I had a huge staff of the men, the women, the youth teams. So it was 27 teams in total. Every team had a sports scientist. Every team had multiple physical or athletic trainers. They didn't have physical therapists to say so. Only on the first team, so it was physical therapist. We had the first teams equipped very, very good. We had a humongous budget relative to a lot of other clubs and other federations. Obviously, the good thing about America is that it's very performance based, so I could pretty much do whatever I want. We had amazing collaborations with a brand that I can't say now because we are now in the competition of that brand.
Okay. Okay.
And so we did a lot of good stuff in collaboration towards the World Cup. We took all the wins from the good world from the men and put that into like a female environment when the World Cup. On the women's side, there was lots of transfers. We were able to educate not only US soccer but also like the whole American soccer ecosystem. So that's when things became a little bit more complicated. My dad got really sick. I was far away, unfortunately, due to visa regulations, and the kids, I was there with the whole family. The kids, unfortunately, were not able to stay there. And from there on, it was just, time for them to go back to the Netherlands. My marriage, ended, which is also a big part of the whole thing. And I started to look for, how can I get closer to home? How can I see my kids instead of seeing them every 8 weeks or 9 weeks? How can I get closer to home? And that's when the Eagle Group gave me a phone call after applying for a couple of jobs. Not always like I'm always like I was like the silver medal winner in a lot of Premier League clubs, Bundesliga clubs. It was almost like it was so difficult to get back because I wasn't living in that particular country.
Okay.
And the competition is killing. There are so many good, high performance directors. There's so many good head of medicines. In all fairness, if you look at the landscape now versus 20 years ago, there are really, really, really good people in and around this particular topic that are in particular job, and they're doing a magnificent job. So I have to say, definitely not like I'm the only person doing this. There are a lot of people being very successful. And I think that's why it's so difficult to get a good job. And then Eagle would call me and they said, "Hey Rick, do you know someone from this position? Because you probably don't want to take it." And I said, well, I know one guy. You have him on the phone right now. So I started the conversation. It was a really cool. It was a cool conversation. Michael Gerlinger, who gave me the phone call, he's an amazing personality. Shifted here from being like sporting manager of the whole Eagle Group towards the CEO of Olympique Lyonnais. But we had a great connection. So now making a step forward. Now I'm here for like 8 months.
Okay.
Amazing people. I have to say, it's very difficult with the language barrier. I try my best to understand, but I think how much you probably know. You've been in France probably multiple times, but it's very, very complicated language. So it's I'm struggling a little bit with that, but I try to do my best also here to oversee the medical department, the sports science, research innovation. Is not really, we're starting a little bit of it, but every individual has an individual development plan where they have to do bits and pieces of research. And I'm doing the innovation part myself, try to figure out, where we're going to spend our money on, strength conditioning, data infrastructure, analytics, and psychology, pretty much. And then for the academy, we do not have the women's side here because the women are a separate club, to say so.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. Which is, I think, the first women club in, I think global or I don't know, maybe it's just Europe, to be separate from the.
Women are very successful in Olympique Lyon.
Oh, they're really, really good. And I don't even know, 14 times back-to-back champions.
Something like that, yeah.
France, which is pretty crazy. They have some Champions League, but that's not my success. That's a success of a lot of other people who have done a magnificent job in creating an environment for them to be successful in. And we try now to do a good job on the men's side and the academy side, to create structure, to create an organization that's more transparent. It's almost a little bit like taking it from a national Lyon based club to a more global club, having an understanding of what can we take from the good things from the Premier League and what can we take from the good things from Spain and from Italy, and putting it all together while still keep the culture and the original Lyon atmosphere. So it's a long story. I can probably, I can dive into a zillion avenues to get more knowledge. But I think the basic thing why I turned out here, and I think that is why this is a little bit of a different story than how I told it in a lot of other areas, is recently there was a publication around sustainability of medical people and people in sports science in football or in soccer.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow it's always accepted that you just have to work harder and harder and harder and make 80 to 85 hours a week because there are so many games to play. But I made a decision to come from a magnificent job that I would have never left if the family was in America. So I think the message is like, yes, Olympique Lyon is a very good club, very big club. Yeah, I'm very proud to be here. But the main reason is that I chose my personal life over my professional life, and I think that's a very important piece of why I'm here.
I think there's so many things that you can take out of that story, but I don't know if you also got like the same lesson that I perceived. Of course, like apart from the fact that you just mentioned, which is like sometimes you have to put your personal life and you have to prioritize some things that are more important for you, but then also all that journey that you have just tells me like sometimes you have to delay that gratification at the moment, and like sometimes things are not going to go as well or are not going to feel that they're going as well, but they're going to yield benefit at the end. Like you went through 13-14 years of absolute hard work, like sleeping at 2 a.m., but then once you got like you were not making good amount of like money, even though you were in a field that you liked. But then at the end, it comes like all that exposure to all those different scenarios, the amount of workload that you did, like gave you the experience. So you got to a point where people were just calling you instead of you having to like approach different people, right? So I think that's also a good lesson for a lot of people, that sometimes the work you're doing today, it might not seem like the best thing or you're just working for working, but then at some point, if you do the right things or you're patient enough, then that's going to bring results.
Yeah, and I think so. We are in a different time right now that has to be said. But I never had someone who could coach me in certain areas. So I had to find success, and I created it by making my own KPIs and sharing the right KPIs with, I think, the right people. And to give you an idea, my first ever company, I went to, I said, I'm not going to train normal people, with all respect for normal people, because I'm a normal person. But I want to train CEOs, so I'm going to big companies like Philips, like Unilever, like just big, and I'm just going to be bold, and I will say, like, if I'm going to train you, we're doing a test on, for instance, a bike ergometer or a treadmill or a rowing ergometer, and I'm going to show you that within 3 months you'll be fitter physically, but you will always also be happier in your work, and your work-life balance becomes better. And it will be a heavy lift in the beginning. You'll hate it in the first weeks. So what I did, I was there at 6 a.m. with some guys, and we went in a rowing boat in Amsterdam. So I was living in Utrecht at the time. So I drove at 5 a.m. in my car, and I took a rowing boat on the roof of my tiny car, and I drove up to these people, and they were like, all right, if this guy drives 60 kilometers for me to do this at 6, I'd better do this. Or I would put 2 bikes in my car, and I would drive to them, in Rotterdam, and I would pick them up at lunchtime, and I said like, here's the bike, let's do this, and I would go, or I would go on Sunday night at 10 p.m. and I would call a tennis court, say, hey, listen up. I know you guys close at 9, but you have to keep this open for me. I will pay you $20 extra, but you have to keep this court open for me. And I would get someone and bring him to the tennis court, and then we play tennis at 10 p.m. I just did things that other people didn't do, and I noticed that these people really appreciated it and started to talk very positively about what I did. But I also didn't sell, excuse my language, bullshit. I sold a piece of their success. And that's the same thing I did with going to the Olympics, with the field hockey in London, for instance. Everyone said, no, we have to do this particular approach of periodization. And I said, no, I'm going to do it in my way. And because I believed in research that I did myself, and I believed in the people and the different culture that the Dutch people had. So we changed things, and I said, like, we're going to make sure that we as Dutch guys, for the first time in history, will be the fittest team around. And we were playing with our opponents, semi-final against England, 9-2 win. It was insane. And we were like deers running around, maybe we were even too fit, to be fair. So somehow, and then learned from, specifically, we played the final against Germany. We lost against Germany 2-1. But the German guy who scored the goal walked behind the goal. And in field hockey, you're not allowed to walk behind the goal. But then the referee didn't see it. And I learned so much from that moment. And because we can work harder and harder and harder. But that changed my perception of the world, in a sense, like, sometimes you have to play a little bit with the elements and be more smart. So instead of working hard, I started also to become a little bit more smart. But it was that particular moment during the London 2012 Olympics final that I started thinking, like, not everything is seen by everyone. So your perception of being willing to have like these small, tiny wins, sometimes you can make a big win by doing something out of the box. So I started to, do other things, and that's why, or not why, that's when, I was being very, very, very lucky with a lot of gold medals that were, that I was part of. I obviously didn't do it myself, but we were able to get a lot of gold medals in a lot of championships. We played a lot of like big teams that we beat while no one thought that we were able to. We changed the perception of COVID, so that helped also with like, hey, these guys are doing individual development plans while being in COVID time. How is that possible? So we worked around. I think the bottom line is I always did things that other people would criticize in the beginning, and now they're normal practice, Yeah. So it just takes time, but you have to be able to. Sometimes you have to put on a bulletproof vest, and there's people that shout, and as long as as long as you don't let your ego be like, shifted around, and your ego becomes too big, saying, oh, but it was me. No, you just let it happen. And sometimes if it works out and you have your right KPIs, you can show that you reach your KPIs, someone will pick it up. And you will get a chance. And that's how I try to make sure that the people who I work with, they also get a chance, or I bring them in a situation to be able to get a chance. So, it's just it's almost not a performance podcast anymore. It's more like a philosophical podcast.
But I love that idea of creating success and not doing necessarily what everyone else does, but fundamentally what's gonna benefit the athlete, right? And everything that is now standard practice at the beginning was probably perceived as delusional at some point. So So I think that's also a very good thought, though. Now to make that transition more to a performance podcast, I wanted to like make this because I was thinking, okay, how could we get a sense of how you approach the performance aspect, but then also for us to get an overview of how a high performance team like Lyon works. I wanted you to probably drive us to how does a season in the team look like. It's like starting from the preseason and going into the season and in the off season, and then like the specifics of the things that you try to work on in each of these stages, if that works for you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's almost difficult to give you a starting point, but I think the first thing, which is a big problem in most teams, is that it's a multidisciplinary approach.
Okay.
So what I do, apart from all the performance strategies, is I start to get clarity on roles and responsibilities. So it's like, what is my actual job? So I have what I call a service list. So in that service list, it says medical is doing these services. And then I share with the medical team, because I listen to everyone first. I have a lot of conversations. And then you hear about like, oh, these are the services that are in this particular area that you own. So it's does everyone agree on these services? And I share the service list amongst everyone. So there's full transparency, because why, you're in the same team, so you have to have an understanding of what the same team is. So once we have the service list, I start creating individual goals that are part of accountability on the service list.
Okay.
So it's not only executing the service, because that's your day-to-day job, but it's about how can you improve that particular service on that list and getting people to be held accountable on that particular area. So let's say, and this is an example, let's say we're entering preseason, and our one of the physical coaches has to make a indoor gym program for all the guys that came from external clubs.
Okay.
So we have this particular element. So every individual player needs to have a plan. And then the idea is we can every year do the same thing. And every year we can, say, all right, so we're football. So we're looking into literature and say like, strong core. We have to do Frans Bos exercises. And we want to combine that with making sure that we have like the standard, like Olympic numbers, like lifting stuff. And so that's one approach. But I love to do it a little bit different, in a sense of this individual now has the opportunity. So this particular coach has the opportunity, or the strength and conditioning coach, the opportunity to create something of himself.
Okay.
That proves that mechanism of the player. So, for instance, he can choose whatever testing he does. The only thing that I expect him to make is a burden impact scale. So in order to improve that particular strategy, we want to start with the low-hanging fruit. Low burden, high impact. So let's say a player is within the surface, the player gets a gym program and he hates to go into the gym. So the lowest hanging fruit in this case is you have to motivate the player. So you have to make it fun. So on this particular scale, low burden, it doesn't cost us any money, it just costs you a lot of time. So you have like a low burden, and the impact is very high because the player has to go into the gym. Once he goes into the gym, he'll start loving it. So now it's about like, how can we make this program enjoyable for the player? And then we find a strategy that helps this particular person. And we do the same things. I can tell this all day, in a sense of like, everyone knows this. Like you're not going to work on things that have, that you have to work 2 years on. If you want to create bigger, like more hypertrophy in order to let someone run faster, why are we going to spend 2 years of making someone 2 kgs heavier and build higher hypertrophy if we know that this individual's running technique is not good? So we have to have a sense of the running technique, and we want to have a sense of the jumping technique and the single leg landing and everything. So we start to figure out where the most difficult or the easy areas to approach are, but where the deficits are in the individual to become a better person. So we start again, low burden, high impact. If it's
And that
only
is from the preseason, right? We're talking like at the beginning.
that is before preseason, once a
Okay.
player comes in, because we do all the tests, in the beginning. So that's where we start with the individual. So now we have an image of the player. We know where we want to take this player to become a better version of himself. We also know how the program looks like and how we're going to periodize it over time. And the same thing is for the team periodization. So we have someone who is responsible for team periodization. So what you want to do is have a sense of like, all right, what is it? What's the technical plan? So from the technical plan, the physical coach with the coach, you start to work on like, what is the best periodization model for this particular strategy?
Mhm.
I am not a person that says, all right, we have game day on Sunday, Monday recovery, Tuesday day off, Wednesday session 1, session 2, conditioning session, blah, blah, blah. Or Sunday game, day off, recovery or startup session, session 1, conditioning session, day off. I don't really care what the actual performance plan is. The problem is we just don't know. So we don't know what the best microcycle is. So within the microcycle, I do want to make sure that we make a decision that is fixed on a technical plan, but also helps our players that we have in the best possible way to recover at times and be able to train in times. And then we use literature to find the best fit for our environment. Otherwise, I would be a physical coach and not a performance director. Because if we get a new coach with a new physical trainer, the whole system changes. But I want to make sure that the Olympique Lyonnais way stays the Olympique Lyonnais way.
Okay.
So I'm trying to get all these parts of the puzzle and put it in place. And yes, we do preseason. And the idea that I have is always like we work backwards. So we need to know what the workload is in the most heavy weeks that we have. And we want to have some kind of a blueprint of that particular week earlier in the season or during preseason. So you are working towards a certain standard and you create a benchmark week. And from that benchmark week, you're going to flow a little bit. I love the idea of working hard, but you cannot always work hard. Sometimes you have to work hard within the session, but a little bit less volume. So you're glowing. So the players do have the opportunity to recover, but also have the opportunity to work hard. But every session, I think the basic idea is that every session that a player attends is the most important moment of the day. So you want to put all your focus, attention, like you are mandated as a coach, as myself, and as also as a physical coach, to put the maximum effort in that particular session. The quality is one of our main statements. Quality is like top. We cannot deliver 90%. It's not like, today I had a day off.
Yeah.
Yes. But tell it, say it, and then someone else will take over, because you can have a day, you can have an off day, just like a player can have an off day. But, and this is a very, the thing I struggle with in 2025 is sometimes I don't even dare saying things, but like, yes, you have to push yourself if you're in top sport to deliver top excellent level of work. You step into this environment, and that is what I do. And that's I'm not on the field anymore, but I want to make sure that everyone who jumps in or who walks into this environment has an idea of it. It's happening here. Here is, it breathes excellence. Here is where every day I'm asking the most of my players, but also the most of myself. And we are on what I call the edge of our abilities. Like this is why you're at Olympique Lyonnais, because you are on the edge of your ability.
Yeah.
You're not here because you're average. So everyone who is here also gets, the trust that they are the best. So we do that with screening individuals, screening the players. We work our asses off to figure out, like, how can we get an edge over this player? Why is this player a little bit better there? How can we get this player on the field in his best possible way? And that is how we live day by day. That's how preseason looks like. That's how the season looks like. I think now, obviously, the most difficult part is like the seasons are so long. How do you get everyone, in that well, you're not always in the flow, but how can you get everyone in that mindset on a longer term?
Yeah. And I mean, just to make sure that I understood correctly, so before everything starts, you first want to have a good idea of the position in which the player that you're gonna have is, right? And then have an approach with which you're gonna work. Okay, what's the thing that by working on it, we're gonna get the most benefit from it, right? And then something that I wanted to ask you in that preseason, just to make sure I got it clear as well, is you mentioned that in that preseason or that beginning of the season, you want to replicate how the week with the highest load of the season is gonna look like. Is that right?
Yeah, you want to have an idea of a projection of what, like,
Okay.
I don't know if it's like actually the worst case scenario, but like we figure out like what can a week look like in a European week. So we have a game on Sunday, we have a game on Wednesday, and we have a game on Saturday, for instance. Like, how does that look like? And you want to replicate that as much as possible. I think one of the things that I changed a little bit, but when I was in the Olympic teams, I always tried to replicate plus 10%. So you had like the week volume, and every session we had like a game intensity measure, and all the metrics that we used were pretty much like at the level of our top game. So if we played a 5 against 5, we tried to make sure that we reached those levels of intensity, which was high speed running over 20 kilometers an hour. We had the number of accelerations over 2 and 3 meters per second square. We had the number of decelerations and intensity of decelerations 2 and 3 meters square. We had total volume per minute. We had all those numbers. We had a percentage of high speed running versus total distance, and then mechanical load. So those elements we used, and we put that into like a block of like 1 minute, and then we tried to reach the number of minutes that we were able to grow over time. So you started with 5 minutes in a 7 against 7, and then by week five, the same 7 against 7 was like 7 times 5 minutes, for instance. Okay. So you work towards that week volume. But now, so we go back a long time. Now things have changed a little bit. Yes, we try to replicate as much as possible the game intensity and the game flows, but also the tactical objective that is part of it. So you want to get more balls into the final third. You want to make sure that you have more shots on goal. And to do so, you need to deliver. But sometimes you run for nothing. So I think there is a part of where like efficiency comes in. And then training, you make decisions on, hey, we want to do a training game that is more based on intensity, then the efficiency doesn't really matter. It's just a conditioning game. Or now we get some kind of a tactical exercise where the objective is 5 times in this 7 minutes, we want to get into that area. If you don't get there, you miss your objective, and probably you have to change for block number 2. And maybe we need to run a little more or less, maybe we need to do other stuff. So those are different types of games. So now I would say, yes, we still have the blueprint, but yes, we're also working on being more efficient, being better equipped to come into the tactical zones and the tactical execution that you want to have. And in combination with also thinking that you cannot adapt to everything, you also need to have a better recovery plan. So the recovery plan now is standardized and normalized, throughout time. We have different days for different recovery modalities, different time for different recovery strategies. We have different protocols for different days. So I think I will never really be able to release the idea that the game shouldn't be a surprise for the body. So it's like running a marathon. It's not like tomorrow I can run a marathon if the maximum output I have is 10 kilometers. So I have to work towards that 42 kilometers at least to be able to run a marathon. But maybe if I do 32, I will be well equipped to play the game without having, muscle soreness the day after or 2 days after. So I'm now probably more like looking for a balance between, hey, do I have to adapt fully to that blueprint of the week? Or can I also fill things in with a better recovery plan? be smarter during a game, make different game decisions.
Okay.
So I think that is why, yes, I hope that we can at least get to the metrics during preseason that we want to go to, but I'm not shocked anymore if we don't reach it. While 10 years ago, I was, oh Lord, my hands in my hair. I don't know what to do. We didn't reach it. We're at 70%. We will get cramps in the first game, and in the second we'll be tired. In the third game, the quality will be significant. The quality loss will be significant.
Okay.
No, I'm not. Or I try to accept Mother Nature's rules a little bit better.
I see, and I can see how, let's say, if you can get the same, like to the point that you mentioned of trying to be more efficient, like if you can get the same amount of like adaptation or preparation with less load, or like with less load, well, I think it's like fundamentally it would be better for you because you're not putting so much volume on the players, right? And another thing that you mentioned is that season part is mostly like you trying to see like, okay, what makes this player perform better in this area. It's a lot of like being react. Of course, you have your blueprint from the beginning, but you have to react a lot of times. I wanted to ask you, what are the things that you're looking for in that season to make those decisions on, just say, let's say, oh, whether we train tomorrow, whether we put a high load tomorrow, whether we're gonna rest. Like, what drives those decisions of how the training looks like in season?
Yeah, so I try, like, because I love standardizations. I created like a standardization protocol. So we have our daily questionnaires, we have our daily wellness screen, we have the workflow or the workload of the last week and the last day. So yes, we still work with chronicle and acute work ratios. Yes, we still work with day-to-day questionnaires. We still have an RPE on hand, but I think one of the main things is obviously asking the player, how do you feel today? I think what I always love to do is project a 3-month period of time, and then after a month I add the third month again, so you get this running mechanism. 3 months. After 1 month, you go to month number 4, you plan month number 4, and you plan on and on. I love to do that because it gives me grip on the situation, and it also gives you the freedom to add a session or take a session out. If you don't plan it, it will be a surprise for everyone, and then it's like, how will next week look like? And that idea for a player gives stress.
Definitely.
So if you can give clarity for everyone, whether it's about the program or programming, or whether it's about the type of sessions that you go into, or the type of opponents you're going to train on, it will give rest. Because some players, and in a squad of like 23, it might be 50%, need that. The other 50% probably don't need it. So that's why it will always be a discussion. And one coach says, I like to plan for tomorrow. And another coach is like, no, I like to plan for 12 months. I don't know what the best, and I will be the first person to say that I definitely don't do the right thing. The only thing what I do is try to do the most logical thing. Have an understanding that some people will benefit from a program. And in all fairness, if you don't benefit from a program, you don't care if there is a program. So you might better plan something, at least if you service both ends of the party. And so I think that's what I really try to do. And then you start diving. If you know 3 months, you also know, hey, we have this person on day 1. How will it look like after 3 weeks? And you just do tests, and you find the right test. You only do the necessary test. If you cannot have influence on a test, and I know this has been said by a million people, if you cannot have influence on a test, why are you executing the test? It's just another burden. Let's say you do a drop jump, but then you never train on a drop jump, or you don't understand a transfer of a certain exercise towards a drop jump, I would say don't do the drop jump. It doesn't help you. You're not going to test a status quo, correct? You want to test something that gives you something.
Definitely.
So let's say you do a 30-meter sprint or a 5, 10, 20, and a 30-meter sprint. So if you're not going to sprint outside and you're just going to wait for the games to make your player faster, don't do this test. But if you say, hey, week 1, we're going to do microdosing until week number 10, and the microdosing is every single day. We at least do 2 sprints of 30 meters, and we just put it into, whatever whenever day we have, maybe 3 times a week. And after 3 weeks, you will see that there will be a neurological adjustment to 30 meters, and you score better on a 30-meter sprint.
Yeah.
Now the question, does this 30-meter sprint translate into the game? And that's when things become more complicated. And that's why I am here, for instance, to figure out, do we also have more runs in the deep if we are faster? Or are we able to win 1-against-1s in the deep? Can we put the ball behind in the space and you're faster so you have an edge on your opponent, yes or no? So that is the next level thing. But if you're let's say you're in a university or a college team, it will be very difficult to track those things. So you better be fast. At least you know that you'll have an edge on speed. Yeah. And then it's also about touching the ball, etc. But this is an example of how to test. So while historically we tested every individual player with the same things, now, yes, on the first end of things, you want to get this player through all the tests, but we also cut tests out of an individual. If the individual has a body composition for a year round that is always the same, well, do we actually think that we have to test every 3 weeks in the next year? Or are we okay with doing it every 6 months and get the burden off the player and get your work a little bit easier? Until something changes, of course. If this player all of a sudden gets injured, now the situation changes. You want to make sure you keep him in the sweet spot. So as you hear, things have become so much more individual that the workload for everyone is like sky high. So in order to create a good workflow for everyone, measure and train the things that you are going to expect to change. If you don't expect things to change, if you do agility, but you never train on agility, don't test the agility. It's useless, because yes, there will be a translation in playing football or soccer and doing this. But if you don't put your attention to it, the test will be the same year in, year out. And maybe if you get older, it goes down. You say, oh yeah, that's slower. Yeah, but you didn't train on it. And the time changed the individual. So
that makes sense. Like, if you do the test and don't train on it actively, you don't even know what you did to improve it or make it worse.
Exactly.
And you mentioned it's called microdosing. Like you do, let's say, 2 30-meter sprints 3 times a week. I mean, I never heard of this. It's interesting.
Yeah, I love microdosing, and especially when you want to create a neurological change or adaptation for someone, is doing things on a daily basis instead of having one block of gym work every week. You give them 15 minutes of work every single day. So it's more like a long-term adaptation process. Because you don't overload them, they won't get like muscle soreness, etc. But they are working on this element. I dare you right now, and you're a great specimen, Mats. Every time you're in a warm-up, and I want to have your feedback on this in 6 weeks, you set out for yourself a 10-meter and a 30-meter. Yeah? So you're going to do every single day. So if you're training, if you don't train, you get a day off, of course. You're going to do 3 times a 10-meter sprint, all out, so after your warm-up, and 2 times a 30-meter sprint. And I don't know if you have speed gates, but let's say you don't have speed gates. You're just going to measure with a stopwatch. Let two people measure stopwatch, like bleep, bleep, at the same time, and then measure after 6 weeks. And you'll see that you became significantly faster.
Okay.
And the only thing you did is you just ran more. If you want to run faster, go faster. And then, of course, you can tweak things by getting a specific coach for you to help you on your technique. And you can work around like, oh, you need to lean more forward, or your step frequency need to change, or your step length need to change, or you need to work more with your toes. Those are the other elements that can even push you further. But in first instance, if you want to run fast, you don't have any means. If you want to go faster, start running faster.
Yeah, if you want to run faster, run faster.
That's it.
I'm gonna try it.
Yeah, and that's relative to having one speed session a week. And then in this speed session, you work an hour on that particular element. Then you go more towards athletics. That's like doing you're 100-meter sprinter. And you're going to work on your start and on your mid acceleration and your stride of your length. And yes, you need a lot of time to get like those 1%. But in all fairness, most football players are not in that 1% area that they have to adapt 1%. They have to have a neurological change of the system, that the system understand that the step frequency needs to go up.
Yeah.
And it will adjust.
And also, like with the microdosing, like you mentioned, like it's a low load, but it's still like it's on a long-term process, especially with such a high load.
It can be high load, but of course, if you're not able to do bench press, you're not going to start with 120 kg. So you start at like 80% of your 1RM, for instance, and then you do it every single day. You do like 3 times 3 repetitions. And then after a week, you add 1 kg. Instead of adding 5 kgs, you just add 1 kg. And you do it the same. And then after another week, you add another kg. And then in 10 weeks, you add 20 kg on 10 on both ends. And you're significantly stronger. But yes, you're not putting your effort maximum on that particular element of weightlifting by, gaining 40 kgs in 3 weeks, which is a possibility. But that doesn't fall on the microdosing way. And don't forget that the demanding a program of playing a game every 3 or 4 days here in Europe is crazy. So you have to do microdosing. You cannot overload them on one day too much, because they will be fatigued if they play on a Wednesday. Or just like I said, the football training is the most important moment of the day. So you want to have excellent execution there. If you put your effort on too many high jumps and you work on it for an hour or for 30 minutes instead of microdosing, it's going to be very, very difficult to execute a soccer training at the highest quality, to say so.
Yeah, it's like I'd rather be a little bit sore in the gym than being sore in the field, right? And I don't know if it's the same, but I was watching a video. I think it was an interview with a guy called Pavel Sadzelin, I think was his name, and he was talking about the principle of like it's better to actually do small amounts through a consistent amount, like through a long time, consistently, rather than doing a split in which you only like work on that stimuli around 1-2 times a week.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I think
it's pretty much a principle of adaptation. It's like, and I might touch on a wrong topic here, but those people who are going through a diet and they're yo-yoing, because they put a lot of effort in 3 months, and then they're there, and then they stop, and their weight goes up again. Relative to people who do small adjustments over a full year, and they have the same effect, but it takes them a little bit longer. But it's also, it stays. They're not going anymore. It stays. It's like long term. I think that's the same thing. And in football or soccer, you have to, because the competition is so demanding. If you put too much effort, you also start yo-yoing, because you cannot do this all the time. If you make your hamstring strong in 3 weeks and you stop with that, what's the use? You need to do it for a long time to adapt, because your body will adapt. That's what Mother Nature gave us. It's learning. It's as if you start playing guitar, you do it for 1 week, very intense, you're really good. But if you don't do it for 3 weeks after, you pretty much have the feeling that you got a full setback and you have to start all over again. Better to play 5 minutes every single day, and it's long lasting and it stays, and it's also easier to do.
Definitely sustainability, and then that's what actually brings like the result. Ulrich, I know I could be here talking for like 2 more hours, but I just want to be also like conscious of your time as well. Just wanted to make sure that like I imagine you might have to leave now. No.
Yeah, I'm so sorry, but I'm probably here. I'm very passionate
Oh,
about these topics,
I
and
totally can tell. Yeah.
yeah, it's I think the bottom line is,
Yeah.
as a final thought, is like there are a couple of things that I really really am into. First of all is accepting that Mother Nature gave us rules on how the body works, and we cannot mess with those.
Mhm.
We cannot adapt it. Recovery will take time. That's how it is. Getting back from injury will take time. That's how it is. But what we can do is make the mistakes that we make relative to Mother Nature's rules, make less mistakes,
I see.
because that helps the system. I think that is one. And the second thing is it has to be logical. Yes, for me, I think it's very important to have a explanation from a scientific explanation for things, and because it guides me a little bit. But I also have to be conscious of not taking it one on one, because there's so much difference in whatever research says. But not take it one on one, but keep on thinking in a logical way how you can implement it and make it better. Because it's not sad that if you have to do a Nordic for a hamstring to be sustainable and have less hamstring injuries, for sure. But there are multiple ways to implement this and be smart about it without putting such a big load in day one on a hamstring. So don't forget that you have a brain also, and you can tweak with the ideas, but let science guide you, but not take you over. And don't be, we say this in the Netherlands, I don't even know, like, don't be a unity sausage. No, don't be a hamburger, but just start to create your own hamburger. If you like hamburger in a sandwich, change the buns into a sandwich, make it, oh, in America, it's the same. Sorry. Change the bun with sourdough, whatever you do, but make sure that you create your own creation, because you have a brain, and
Yeah.
you have to trust your own brain and make it logical for yourself and explainable. And from there on, let yourself be guided by yourself with all the knowledge that is available to learn from.
Definitely. Like if you like not just saying, oh, hip thrust make you faster, but okay, if you understand what actually in the hip thrust makes people faster, then you might be able to use different exercises for people that might not like hip thrust, or like hip thrust might not work for them, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And the last example was there. I at some point, and I won't say a club or a name, we had two physical coaches,
Mhm.
and I went up to one physical coach while he was doing a squat with a certain player, and I asked him like, "Why are you doing the squat?" And he said like, and it was a heavy squat. So he said like, "No, yeah, I'm doing this because it will make him faster over time." So I said like, "I don't like you to do this anymore. Just make sure that you find other exercises to make this player faster, but don't use the squat anymore." So I said, don't squat. And then I went up to another guy, and he was, I think it was 2 months after, he was squatting, and he said like, well, the ergonomics of the movement while going into a jump while heading the ball into the goal, we can improve that by having a starting point with a heavy squat. And from there on, he made a transfer to a squat jump. So I said, all right, continue with the squat. It looks good. So it wasn't about yes or no good execution. It was about the individual understanding why he did it. And I think that for me is most important. And if it's unlogical, you need someone like a high performance director or a high performance manager or whatever to ask the critical questions. But if it's explainable, maybe he's right and maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a great way to end, and a good learning point for a lot of people, like for us as well, just to not just do it because that's how it's been done, but like thinking from first principles on why you're doing it, and then how it's gonna benefit the player. Well, Rick, man, I don't know about you, but I would love to like perhaps hop in another call, maybe like continue the conversation, because I think there's still a lot of things that I would like to ask you about, and a lot of things that I would like to talk, man. So, but I really appreciate you taking the time and like sharing all this knowledge and value with us, because it's definitely super valuable.
No, thank
Awesome.
you very much, Rick. Was very informative and was nice to see like the perspective of you. And I hope you guys are gonna have a even better week. Yeah, the game yesterday, huh?
Yeah, one, no?
We had a game yesterday. We won 2-0 from Red Bull Salzburg, which was a good game for us, and we just have to continue. We're doing really good, but I don't want to jinx it. So
You have to have your
hopefully-